This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are interviewing the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom, Rav.
In the year 1948, the State of Israel was founded, and nearly the majority, if not the majority, of world Jewry currently live in Israel. And yet, some observant Jews bemoan the fact that we are still, quote-unquote, in Galuth. Rabbi Bar-Hayim, are we indeed still in Galuth?
Let us begin at the beginning. The word Golus, or Galuth, more properly pronounced, or Galut, means in Hebrew one thing and one thing only. It means exile. And the word exile means that one is not in one's proper place. One is not at home. One is not in the land, in the country in which one belongs, one should be. This is why we find throughout the Tanakh, throughout the Bible, when the Jewish people are outside their land, when they are, shall we say, taken away by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonia, and exiled to other lands, to Babylon, to Persia, etc., there the Jews are referred to as being in Galuth, in exile. However, as long as the Jews remained in their own country, no matter how problematic and in many ways even disastrous the situation was within the Jewish homeland. When I say disastrous, I mean in spiritual terms, in terms of how far from the way of life that the Torah prescribes the Jewish people had wandered. For example, in the time of a king like Achav, who introduced or increased the incidence and the control of the foreign priests, of foreign Avodah Zarah cults, forms of idol worship in the country, which he promoted, or in the time of another evil king, Menashe, who did the same thing in Judea and the southern kingdom, as opposed to Ahav, who did this in the northern kingdom. No matter how poor the situation was, how far the Jewish people had strayed from the ways of the Torah, how immersed they had become in the ways of the nations, nevertheless, nowhere is that reality of Jews living in Eretz Yisrael, in their homeland, nowhere is that referred to as Galuth. That is a simple fact which refutes any claim that we here in Eretz Yisrael today are living in Galuth. We are living in a situation which is very far from Galuth. It is almost the exact opposite of Galuth. What is the opposite, in fact, of Galuth? Some people would say the opposite is Geula. And I would agree. In general terms, one can speak about a spectrum. On the one side, we have Galuth, exile. On the other side of the spectrum, we have Geula, redemption. And yet, this is a scale. It's not like an electric light switch which you turn on or off. There are shades of grey in the middle. One can be removed from a situation of Galuth. One can move out of such a reality of Galuth. The Jewish people in our own time have now for some generations been moving out of that reality of exile and have been returning in ever-increasing numbers to their homeland. This is an ongoing process, and yet today we have reached the point, Baruch Hashem, where approximately half of the Jewish people reside in the Jewish people's homeland. This is an historic achievement. This is a reality which has not been achieved perhaps at any time since the destruction of the first temple in the year 586 BCE. And therefore this is a very special moment and period of Jewish history and world history. With this return of the Jewish people to their land, we cannot expect that things will overnight go from the darkest depths of Galuth to the brightest and most ideal realities of Geula. Geula is a process also of being removed from Galuth and moving towards a goal, moving towards our destiny. And the Jewish people is moving towards that destiny. The road is not a simple one. The road is full of bumps, and sometimes we go downhill only to have to climb another hill after it. But the general movement, the general trend is a positive one. I'm not going to go into details now to describe all the positive things that one could point to here in Israel today, but any reasonable person can see these things for himself. And therefore, what we need to ask ourselves is, why do some people nevertheless, despite all this, why do they insist that we are living in Galuth, or Golus as they often say? The reason, in my view, is very simple. It is a preference for the familiar. Jews, many Jews, particularly many religious Jews, very often self-described as Haredi Jews, so-called ultra-Orthodox Jews, are frankly uncomfortable. They may not admit this. They usually will not. But they are frankly uncomfortable with any other form of Jewish existence other than exile mode Judaism. Exile mode Judaism, Galuth Judaism, is something they know, something they understand. They know how it works. They know what is expected. They know the modalities, the norms, the rules. We are in a reality here today in Eretz Yisrael which requires a different kind of Judaism, a more authentic kind and form of Judaism based on the Torah Shebichtav and the Torah She'Ba'al Peh, not on parts of the Torah but on the entire Torah, whereas Galut mode Judaism is only based on and only relates to certain areas of the Torah. Here we're talking about a fuller and complete expression of Jewish existence, based on the full and comprehensive vision and direction of the Torah. And that requires change. That requires looking at things in a different way. That requires reassessing. And that therefore that is a challenge. And many people find a challenge such as that to be a task which is simply too great, something which is beyond their capabilities. They prefer, therefore, to remain in Golus rather than deal with moving towards Geula. And that is a tragic and sad reality, and yet that, in my view, is the reality. To insist that you are ill when you are in fact well or becoming much better is a psychological problem, as any medical professional would agree. And yet we know there are people, they're called hypochondriacs, who like to claim, perhaps they don't like to, but they do, this is the fact, this is what rules their existence. They are always, in their eyes, they're always ill. They're always sick, they've always got a problem, even if there is no such problem. The problem, therefore, is not in their physical body, the problem is in the mind. That is hypochondria. Those who claim that we are living in Galuth are suffering from just such a hypochondria. In order to be cured of such a condition, we have to try and explain to people that we are not living in Galuth. Galuth mode Judaism was good and was correct and worked for the Jewish people in the Galuth, but it does not and cannot and will not work for the Jewish people in a period such as our own when we are moving, B'ezrat Hashem, towards Geula.
Thank you, Harav Bar-Hayim. A word to our viewers. If you would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with Harav Bar-Hayim in honor or memory of a loved one, or if you would like to order a Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.